What's up, everybody? It is Izzy back again today with another Q&A. Today was push day, which for me means chest, shoulders, triceps, lateral delts, that sort of a thing. So with that said, here's my last warm-up before my bench work set. You can guess what I got at 350 before we get to it. And let's get to the first question. So, if those of you recall who watched it, last time I did this exercise, I forgot to latch my belt, and I wasn't sure if the stall was because of that. Today, I latched my belt and got the same exact poor result, so definitely wasn't because of that. First question of the day was around 20 to 25% body fat. Goal is looking good. Do we cut first until like 15%? Assuming you're male, I would cut to 10 to 12% and keep your bulks to no more than 14 to 16% if the main goal is looking good. If you are female, you're going to have to add 6 to 8% to each of those ranges. Overall, when the main goal is aesthetics and looking good, the body fat ranges should be a touch lower than for people who are looking to maximize strength and performance. For males, like I would say on average, something more like 12 to 18 is probably best if performance is the main goal. Front squat variation as my main squat off-season move. Good idea or bad idea? I'm assuming this is a bodybuilder because of the language, off-season. I don't think it's a great idea. Most front squats are limited by mobility, core strength, or thoracic extensor strength rather than quads. So people's upper back will give out, or they don't have the mobility to get into a good position in the first place. So unless you're the rare person with like a background in Olympic lifting, or just for some reason you have a picture-perfect front squat and it doesn't completely go to shit the second you put a decent amount of weight on there, I would probably pick something else, something that's harder to mess up the technique, like a high bar or a safety bar squat. What is the efficacy of multivitamins? It's extremely low. There's one long-term research study that actually did all the math, calculated everything out, controlled for all variables, and we actually saw a slight negative correlation with life expectancy and multivitamin use. People who take multivitamins are more likely to live longer, but it's because people who take multivitamins are also more likely to exercise, not drink, and have a bunch of other healthy habits. Once you control for those factors, it doesn't seem to help at all. It actually had a statistically insignificant, but still negative impact on life expectancy. So this is a different situation if you have a blood test that like confirms you're deficient in vitamin D3. You would treat that with something specific, not a multivitamin. What are your favorite hamstring exercises you keep in your rotation? I really think all you need is a leg curl and a hip hinge. My favorite hip hinge would be a strict RDL, which means keep your back flat, a very, very open knee angle, as little knee bend as possible. Ideally, actually even do it beltless, as I tend to find for a lot of people that the belt interferes with their proprioception of their back position, and they end up doing it a little bit rounded, especially if they use a power belt. So beltless RDL is great, and then some kind of a leg curl. Seated leg curl can be better than lying leg curl because you get a better stretch, and better stretch, more hypertrophy. This one is actually borne out in studies directly. Do you try to pick weights where you get at least 6 reps or more, or are sets of 4 and 5 equally hypertrophic? Based on the effective reps model, anything within 5 reps of failure is going to be an effective rep. So sets of 5 should be equally hypertrophic as sets of 6. But 6 is a safer bet, and 4 is definitely going to be a little bit less hypertrophic on average than sets of 5 and 6, and it's going to take more sets to get the same effect. So I do try to stay away from sets of 4, but it happens once in a while when I am overambitious, let's say, about the weight selection, aka when I'm being an asshole. Is shoulder discomfort a normal occurrence in the squat? Is that something related with lack of mobility? Yes. Generally, lack of shoulder mobility, and it's usually external rotation, but sometimes it's tight lats or tight chest, is what causes the ever-dreaded elbow aids that you can get from low bar squats. For people who are super big, we're talking about enhanced males over 250, sometimes smaller, but generally in that range. It can even affect your high bar squat because your flexibility can get that bad. So just stay on top of it. Stuff like shoulder dislocations with the broomstick or a band can go a long, long way towards fixing this, as well as also just, stretching your shoulders by squatting, forcing yourself to get into that position with the bar with lighter loads to keep your shoulder girdle open and mobile. So this movement went well today. I actually got back a few reps, and this goes to show I don't train to failure on absolutely everything. I had to leave a rep in the tank on this movement to get some of my performance back.
Absolutely. We need to redistribute your sexual market value. You were just too handsome, too damn big in more ways than one, you know what I'm saying? And it's just not fair. You're making the rest of us normal men look bad. So I'm going to need you to get not leg lengthening, but leg shortening surgery, penis reduction surgery. I need you to get plastic surgery to get uglier, and give away some of your money too while you're at it. Like, it's not fair, man. Fuck off.
Are you ever going to get shredded? You seem bulked up most of the time. Yes, I mean, last summer I dieted to pretty lean. I would say I got like 7-8% body fat, maybe somewhere in that region. But I'm probably not going to get into contest condition unless I'm actually doing a contest. Like I said in the write-up here, there's really no need for me to have shredded glutes to go to the beach. You know what I'm saying? So there's no point in me getting so lean that I lose muscle mass and lose strength if I'm not going to do a show. So I get lean enough to basically just set up my next bulk. What in your physique shows strong machine pressing but weak free pressing? I actually think I'm relatively weak at both. It's just that I at least do machines more often, so I'm not completely untrained. But I'm completely untrained on a lot of free weight movements right now, and I should be stronger even completely untrained on these movements. And it's just why my upper body, especially my upper body pushing muscles, tend to lag behind the rest. Like my legs are way ahead of the curve, back is on average, and then my pressing muscles just have a long way to go. How many hours of sleep do you aim for or get normally? I don't shoot for any amount of sleep. I don't use an alarm clock. So I just wake up whenever I wake up. Typically, when I am in a surplus of calories or at maintenance, I sleep a lot longer, like 9.5 hours pillow time. So maybe 30 minutes to fall asleep, 9 hours actually sleep. When I'm dieting, that drops to like 8. I actually have an Oura ring which tracks my sleep. And according to that, in the 3 years that I've had it, my average is 8 hours and 46 minutes of pillow time. That said, knowing my sleep won't help you. Sleep needs vary a lot, and they can be anywhere from like 6 to 12 hours depending on the person. If your performance for the whole mesocycle is the best day one after a deload, your programming doesn't work. That means you're literally going backwards for the entire mesocycle. What are you doing? I wouldn't even run that program. I would immediately quit running that program. You're not progressing. Okay, so just to not be a complete dick, I'm going to answer the actual question first. No, I've never used DHB. No, I don't see any particular purpose outside of maybe some niche pre-contest situations where I would use it. That's because it's a very harsh compound, and the primary benefits are on the neurological side of things. So here we go. That's out of the way, right? Everybody that constantly asks me drug questions, and it's like the only thing that they generally ask about, drugs. Half the time, not even half the time, it's 100% of the time, who am I kidding? I click on their profile and I realize Natural's Larson press your deadlift. You suck. You need to focus on training, nutrition, and the basics, not exotic drugs. You suck because you focus on exotic drugs. You think drugs are the answer to everything. You need to focus on training. You don't know anything about training. If you did, you'd be way further along as a natural than you are as an enhanced athlete. You are talking about a very particular and specific exception to the law of specificity when it comes to training. And that is you don't want to use any strength and conditioning exercise that is too similar to the actual contest technique because it can interfere with the motor pattern. So basketball players shouldn't be shooting with different sized balls. Boxers shouldn't be punching with different sized gloves. However, that said, there's basically no point at which having a strong bench press, it becomes too strong and it interferes with your ability to punch. What happens is that basically the cost of getting your bench press any higher is too high for the benefit to cost ratio to make any sense, right? The opportunity cost is way too high. It's going to cost you too much recovery, too much time that you could be spending on areas that will yield a bigger return. So that's generally speaking though, like if you could just wave a magic wand and give a boxer an 800-pound bench press, they'd be way, way better. Is the hammer strength incline a decent choice for DC training? Yes, that's actually one of the movements that Dante originally suggested. You will find, yes, that on your rest pause, you'll have a bigger rep drop off on this movement than other movements, but it's still a fine choice. Do you think hammer strength machines should be used with a max grip width? No, I don't. Use a grip width that produces stack joints, so elbows directly over the wrists when you're at the bottom, absolute bottom of the movement, so that fully stretched position. Stack joints is the key. Will a lighter set of bench in the 6 to 10 rep range on my second push day help my bench press in the 3 to 6 rep range more than incline bench or a machine? Yes, a specific variation will always help more than a less specific variation. And obviously a high rep bench is a pretty specific variation compared to a low rep bench, which is the exact same movement. That said, if you're doing push days, that means you're probably training for hypertrophy. So if you want to peak your bench, run a bench peaking program. Don't make a Frankenstein bodybuilder powerlifter program. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. The last video on this profile is a 275 or 125 kg squat for a double. You haven't put in the work yet. You haven't paid your dues. Go train. Go train for years and then revisit this question when you actually know what you're doing. What is your favorite squat accessory exercise? For me, it's definitely the hack squat. As a lifelong low bar squatter, my squat was always limited by quad strength. I had a good morning kind of style squat where my knees would pull back and cave in a little bit, and I would use tons of hips and forward lean to finish the movement. Ever since I started incorporating hack squats where your hips physically cannot shoot back because there's a pad that blocks them, my quad size and strength has gone up exponentially, I want to say. It's obviously not literally exponential, but it's just gone up so much. I feel like if I could go back in time and add hack squats as an accessory, my squat and my deadlift would be 25 kilos stronger each because I was limited by off of floor strength and deadlift and limited by my quads on my low bar squat. So that's my take on that. If you guys want to hear me actually make a full video on why I think hack squat is a good accessory movement for powerlifting, let me know in the comments. If I get enough people saying they want to see that video, I will make it. That said, here's my hack squat PR, 7.5 plates for 6. On what criteria do you choose rep ranges outside of rep ranges that cause joint pain? So the main criteria is that you want the target muscle to actually be the limiting factor. You don't want it to be cardio or pain tolerance or joint, tendon, soft tissue distress. You don't want it to be your grip strength. You don't want it to be slowly your position is degrading over the set. So a common example of this would be like a set of 20 on barbell squats is usually limited by your breathing. Same thing with a set of 20 on deadlifts. Now, not for everybody, but for most people it is. Something like a heavy barbell curl for 5 reps, even though it might technically be in the hypertrophy rep range, you're going to find that a lot of people bend their back and they swing it around because it represents a big percentage of their body weight and they have to move around to be stable. So you just want the target muscle to be the limiting factor primarily. Having the E2 levels well above the normal range is perfectly fine if you're not getting unacceptable side effects. For everybody, though, there is going to be a certain threshold where you're dealing with gyno, where you're dealing with erectile dysfunction, where you're dealing with water retention that's so severe that it's causing you to increase your blood pressure medication or interfere with training and things of that nature. So there is going to be a threshold for everybody, but many people operate well with their E2 well outside of the physiological range. So overall, especially because of the myriad benefits of having sufficient and even a surplus level of E2 compared to the physiological ranges for enhanced lifters, it's probably a good idea to let your estrogen run to the high side if you're not getting negative side effects. I mean, that's not going to have a very large effect if you're taking NyQuil to help you fall asleep less than once a week. Anytime that you do use a sedative to help you fall asleep, it will reduce sleep quality, so keep that in mind. But again, like with the frequency that you're talking about here, I don't think it's that big of a negative. And realistically, sometimes we have to weigh the fact of whether or not sleeping would be worse than sleeping but getting reduced quality sleep. And I tend to err on the side of I'd rather get drug-induced sleep than no sleep at all if those are my two options. Obviously, healthy sleep is always best. Probably as good a time as any to remind everyone I'm not a doctor, not a real one anyway. I just play one on Instagram. But I've only ever worked with one person who had sciatica, and it was for powerlifting actually. So it's just a lot of auto-regulation, taking what you can when you can, and when the pain is interfering with regular training, you just can't be afraid to call an audible and do something else that day. Because if you get too focused on this is my training plan, this is my routine, I must stick to it 100% no matter what, kind of like the average mentality of a normal powerlifter, that's just going to cause you to feel defeated really quickly. So flexibility and auto-regulation was the name of the game there. So I think it's cool. It does everything that it's supposed to do, but it's pretty expensive for what you actually get. The primary value to me is in the sleep tracking. It tells you like how long you slept, gives you an estimate of the quality of the sleep, but it isn't perfectly accurate. Like, for example, it says my sleep from 2 days ago or something, and it says that I got 18 minutes of deep sleep, which is absurd, because if I only got 18 minutes of deep sleep, I would feel like shit. And then it has like a different sleep tracking algorithm that's like a new one that's in beta, and if you switch over to that one says I got almost all deep sleep and no REM sleep. So the quality the algorithm determining the quality doesn't work that well. So in the end, what you get is a ring that tracks the amount of sleep that you got, your steps, your heart rate, your temperature, and it does give you a good idea of your overall health and readiness on that given day. But to me, it's more of like an oddity and a cool little thing than something that you need to get better results.